Naruto woke up the next morning to a loud banging noise on his door, followed by the door opening and two sets of footsteps that signaled people entering the room. His eyes opened quickly, and in less than a second, he was holding up a kunai that he kept under his pillow. With meticulously scanning eyes, he gazed at the people in his room, both dressed in full ninja gear and prepared for training. "Get changed and get up now, Agaki," a female voice said, coming from a young woman in a trench coat with a smirk on her lips. Shikaku smirked before chucking a uniform at him, nodding in agreement at her words. "This thing is Anko Midarashi. She's up and coming in the torture and interrogation department, and her training methods are quite brutal, having been in the Anbu herself. She also has experience with poisons and things that you're studying, and she will be one of the people introducing you in this coming week." The uniform landed on Naruto's lap, and the boy just nodded and put away his weapons. "It's all yours until lunch, Anko. Good luck." Anko just grinned and patted Shikaku on the shoulder. "I'm looking forward to this. I admit that I was skeptical when you asked, but seeing his reaction to us entering was fun," she said, glancing at Naruto and then dragging Shikaku out of the room. "I'd be quick, because if you aren't done in 30 seconds, I'm coming in regardless and taking your training without any gear on." She closed the door before she yelled those words, keeping a close eye on the time. Of course, Naruto was already changed by the time she was back, just barely having time to slip some sealing scrolls into his leg pouch that contained his poison-tipped senbon and a few other weapons. He was dressed in standard Anbu gear, however, instead of a full-face animal mask, it was a half one similar to a certain copy ninja, and the clothes were a different color. It was just for the purpose of training with, as actual Anbu gear would be provided if he made it. Anko whistled when she came back in and saw him, nodding in approval. "You're quick. I gotta give you that much. Though you'd better hope you're good enough to get through today. It's a rough training program, and it's only going to get worse as the weeks go by. Though it's going to be rather fun for me to watch." She laughed after she spoke. It was one of those laughs that made it obvious she knew something he didn't, and was pleased about that. It wasn't obvious she was trusted. Naruto would have called the laugh villainous, almost. "I wonder what she could have in store. I probably need to keep my guard up. If Shikaku chose her to help me prepare for the Anbu, there's no doubt I'll need to be ready to expect the unexpected," Naruto pondered, directing his thoughts to Kurama. "You're right. She seems like the loose cannon type, probably gets riled up easily and likes violence. And if her training is fun to watch and she's in the T&I department, then she's probably going to be throwing things at me, or something that'll make me work to avoid injuries or something. I know I have the skills, but my body's still young. Though hopefully, if it does increase in difficulty over the week, it'll allow me to adjust to that and improve both my stamina and the skills that she's going to be training me in." Naruto smirked and looked up at Anko, a mixture of true happiness and excitement in his eyes. Training was training, and it would be good to learn from someone in the Anbu, someone new that would provide more opinions from a different perspective than the people he was used to seeing. Anko seemed to be more blunt too, and wouldn't hide it if she believed he wasn't performing well. "Let's go, sensei." The woman nodded before disappearing, leaving him and Shikaku, who had entered the room again, alone. "Good luck, Naruto. Your first task will be tracking her, aiming to retrieve a green scroll that she has on her person. It might end up taking all day. Who knows with the troublesome woman. Use as much as you need to, but no more than that." "Got it." Naruto first set about trying to track her by scent, one of the things that he had improved over the past 2 years as his body had developed. She smelled like dango and snakes, a rather odd scent that seemed terrifying but at the same time so utterly harmless. Usually ninja that he'd met had a more forest type scent, one that was related to hours spent in training grounds. The exception being the Inuzuka, who smelt like dogs, and the Akamichi, who smelt like food. To smell like snakes usually signified relations with Orochimaru, or so he had found out from Tsunade when he had asked about the former Sanin. And to smell so strongly of dango meant a lot of time was spent in that area. Since there were so many dango shops in Konoha, he decided to focus on the snake scent first. Scent wasn't the most reliable means of tracking perhaps, but it was worth a shot before he decided to try and use more of his other skills. He was still working on his sensing skills, a trait of his Uzumaki heritage that Kurama had worked to bring to surface so it was easier for him to hone and use. Despite Kushina tainting the bloodline with her neglectful ways, they both believed that his family was still one to be proud of belonging to, and the traits were worth using. Other traits that he brought forward were the ability to use healing bites, the increased amount of chakra he could hold, and the ability to use chakra chains. While his body held traits from both his mother and father before, now he held mostly Uzumaki traits and abilities, and those that he had been given from Kurama, such as his Dojutsu. He spent the first 20 minutes searching through the village with 10 shadow clones. He could have used more, but he was still young and didn't have his full chakra reserves. When the amount of chakra he would need to use was still uncertain, and he could use a small portion of the Kyuubi's chakra. He preferred not to underestimate the amount he would have to use, and didn't want to use Nine-Tails chakra as it would no doubt catch the attention of the Hokage if they were nearby. It was only 4 in the morning when he was woken up, so it was still dark, and there weren't as many people around, which in some way made it easier for him. Because of his passive Dojutsu ability, it was easy to see clearly in the dark, and the lack of smells from open food stores was a plus. Once he had found the potential scent, the clone dispersed, as did 4 others, leaving 5 to continue searching for other clues, and Naruto to follow the lead. As it turned out, it was a scent bait set by Anko to keep him off her track, and he guessed she probably would have hidden her own scent with something different by now if she thought to trick him with that. Along with the bait in the alleyway had been several traps that he had been smart enough to check for and not get caught into when searching for the cause of the dango and snake scent. Scent is out of the picture, so I feel like the best option is to try chakra sensing. It's hard when I have so many people around though, so I'll need clones to do it. I'll just get the ones that are already out searching to do it though, he thought, making a clone and then dispersing it so that his thoughts were shared with the existing clones. And so things kept going, though it seemed that every time he got a lead, it was either a trap or something happened to stop him from being able to get any closer in his search to Anko. Every time he was close, her chakra signature disappeared, and it disappeared in a way that he knows was her shunshining. As much as he had hoped not to have to use his chakra concealing abilities just yet, he knew he would have to. The next time he got a lead, he decided to hide his chakra signature. He was silent as he walked over to where she was hiding, one of his clones appearing to see the bait as he had orchestrated. Even if he was close by, he still didn't know the whereabouts of the scroll, and so his best bet was to knock her unconscious, or capture and disarm her if it wasn't possible to do the first thing. It wouldn't be easy to take it from her if she was still fighting, and if she had been in the ambush, she obviously wasn't weak. He hoped she wasn't. Most of the ambu he had found seemed to be because none of them could completely conceal their chakra, unless they were purposely trying to make it obvious they were there to all tuning level and above ninja with any tracking skills at all. They were getting better over the past few months after Minato had taken a stand to improve Konoha's forces. But if Anka was a former Anbu, she was either really good or average tuning level, as was the apparent trend with former and current Anbu. As he walked closer, he noticed that the back of her neck was guarded by the collar of the trench coat. While it wasn't much, it made it difficult to hit the back of her neck unless he moved to an awkward angle, or used more force that could potentially do more damage than knocking her out. Seeing this, he decided that the best approach with his current skills was to try and capture and disarm her. If she had been an enemy ninja that they did not need alive, then he would have chosen the more damaging option to try and knock her out. But she was an ally and to be his sensei for the next week, and as such did not want to take unnecessary risks. He began by using ninja wire to wrap her body, pinning her arms to her sides and stopping her from using two-handed seals. She was able to use the replacement jutsu one-handed though, something he had been worried she might do, and soon all that was left was a wooden log with Anko behind him, sharpened kunai in hand. She threw some at him, which she also used a replacement jutsu to evade because of how accurate she was and the speed of the throw. I have to admit, I wasn't expecting you to find me so quickly, though I am disappointed you took so long to start hiding your chakra signature. In Anbu, that is one of the most important things to do when tracking the enemy, especially if you're that good at hiding your signature. You're young, but in the Anbu, that is no excuse, she told him, sending another 3 kunai his way before simply holding one up as she stood in a defensive stance, waiting for him to attack her. Naruto only nodded, knowing she was right. He had been selfish, and as much as he hated to admit it, trying to prove himself by trying to be stealthy without having to hide his chakra signature fully. He hadn't been talking to Kurama since he wanted to test himself without relying on the fox to tell him what to do. He needed the experience for the field since he couldn't talk to him in the middle of a battle and needed to rely on his own knowledge and instincts. He himself was holding a kunai, but strangely enough was also in a defensive stance. It was suspicious, but Anko took it as some strange defense-based fighting style and kept her eyes out for any sudden movements. What she didn't see was the clone that had completely hidden chakra signature that was jumping out of one of the trees to attack her from above. She immediately moved to be defending herself, her kunai blocking the clones as she pushed them off and defended against another clone, who managed to scratch her arm. Anka didn't flinch or show any sign that it had bothered her, only smirking and moving away from him. Now that I know you can track from clues, scent, and chakra, and deal with basic traps, that's a lot of ninja Anbu deal with use. It's time to get more serious. Now me, your enemy has a gauge for your skills. I don't want to risk sticking around to find out the rest. That's not my objective. I want to run and get back to either my allies or an area that I know better and are more familiar with than you. Let's see what you can do, kid. With that, she began to run in the direction of some of the outer training grounds, some of the more dangerous ones that Anko was familiar in, such as Training Ground 44, the Forest of Death. Smash that like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and make sure to comment Q. Roll the outro. Smash that like button if you want the next part, comment Q, and subscribe if you haven't already. Roll the outro.